What if the moment that caught Army's attention in Arlington wasn't something Jimin did, but something so small that most people almost missed it? Something that, at first glance, looked completely ordinary. So subtle. So simple. In fact, some fans may have watched the entire moment without realizing it was even there. But then the camera moved closer. Jimin turned. The light caught a certain detail around his neck for just a few seconds. And suddenly, something that had been almost invisible became impossible to ignore. Army started zooming in. The video was replayed. Those few seconds were watched again and again. And the same question began appearing among fans. Did you see that? Wait, what is that? How did I only notice this now? And perhaps the most interesting question of all, why could such a tiny detail suddenly make so many people look at Jimin's appearance all over again? Welcome back to the channel. Today, we're taking a closer look at one of those seemingly ordinary moments from Jimin's Soundcheck Day 2 in Arlington that became much more interesting the longer fans looked at it. And before we reveal exactly what caught everyone's attention, I want you to notice something first. Don't immediately focus on the detail everyone is talking about. Don't immediately look for the answer, because if we reveal it too quickly, you might miss the most fascinating part of this story. Instead, let's go back to the beginning, to the atmosphere when Jimin first appeared, to his expression, to the way his hair framed his face, to his outfit, to the way he moved across the stage, and especially to the atmosphere surrounding that particular soundcheck moment. Something looks different. It isn't always because of a major change. Sometimes, it is because of something incredibly small. And Jimin has a remarkable ability to make small details feel much more noticeable than they might otherwise be. Imagine the atmosphere that day. Fans had been waiting. Cameras were ready. The venue was filled with an energy that is difficult to describe unless you have experienced it yourself. People weren't simply there to watch a concert. For many fans, they were there to experience a moment they had perhaps imagined for years. And then Jimin appeared. There was no dramatic announcement suggesting that something unusual was about to happen. There was no obvious signal that the next few seconds would become a topic of conversation. There was no reason for anyone to believe that one tiny part of Jimin's appearance would eventually make fans go back and examine the footage again. Jimin simply appeared. Relaxed. Natural. And that is exactly what makes moments like this so interesting. Because when an idol is performing during the main concert in an official stage look, our attention is naturally guided by the production, the lights, the costume, the choreography, the visuals, the effects. But Soundcheck has a different atmosphere. It feels closer, more relaxed, more personal, more natural. And when Jimin is in an atmosphere like that, cameras can capture a different side of him. Not just Jimin, the global superstar, but Jimin simply enjoying a moment with Army. He smiles. He moves. He looks around. And at certain moments, the camera captures him from an angle that makes certain parts of his appearance much easier to notice. His hair moves naturally as he turns his head. His sunglasses create a completely different mood. His clothing looks much more relaxed than the highly structured outfits we often see during official performances. Everything appears normal. Everything looks like an ordinary soundcheck moment. Until there is one moment. A moment that may last only a few seconds. And if you blink, you might completely miss it. But for Army, those few seconds were enough. Because something begins to appear in an area that normally doesn't receive quite as much attention. Something that initially blends into the rest of his appearance. Something that isn't particularly flashy, but when the light catches it, the detail suddenly becomes much easier to see. And that is where the curiosity begins. Is it part of his styling? Is it an accessory? Did Jimin intentionally choose it? Or is there actually no deeper story at all, and fans are simply doing what Army has always done so well? noticing every tiny detail? But within a fandom as passionate as ARMY, a small visual detail can quickly become a much bigger conversation. Why? Because over the years, fans have become incredibly familiar with BTS members' different styles. They notice changes in fashion. They notice colors. They notice silhouettes. They notice accessories. They notice hairstyles. They notice the smallest details that might go completely unnoticed by a casual viewer. And Jimin in particular has long been recognized for his strong sense of fashion and visual presentation. So when something catches the eye, it is understandable that fans immediately want to know more. But there is something important we need to remember. Not every detail has a secret meaning. Not every accessory is a symbol. Not every change in appearance is connected to another person or a hidden message. And that is actually what makes this story even more interesting. We don't need to create a story that hasn't been confirmed. We don't need to turn an accessory into a rumor. We simply need to look at what is actually visible. And what is visible is this. Jimin is wearing a delicate necklace with a small pendant around his neck. It becomes noticeable during certain moments of the soundcheck footage, especially when he moves or turns and the light catches it. Because the rest of his look is relatively relaxed, the necklace becomes one of those small details that fans naturally begin to focus on. But if we only say, Jimin wore a necklace, then honestly, the story isn't that exciting. The interesting part is how that tiny accessory fits into the entire visual picture. Because fashion isn't simply about wearing something expensive or recognizable. Fashion is also about proportion, balance, texture, movement, and how one small accessory can change the way an entire outfit feels. A necklace might look completely ordinary on one person, but when Jimin wears it, combined with his longer hair framing his face, his sunglasses, his relaxed clothing, and the atmosphere of Soundcheck, the accessory becomes part of a much larger visual impression. And perhaps that is exactly what makes the moment feel so Jimin. He doesn't necessarily need a huge accessory. He doesn't need an extravagant outfit. Sometimes the hair, the glasses, the clothing, and one subtle detail are enough. And there is another reason this moment may feel different. Jimin doesn't appear to be deliberately showing off the necklace. He isn't pointing toward it. He isn't posing specifically to make fans notice it. He isn't directing the camera toward his neck. He is simply moving naturally. And that is precisely why the camera catches it in such an effortless way. When he turns, the pendant moves. When he speaks, the necklace shifts slightly. When the lighting changes, it becomes more visible. And when fans replay the footage, they start noticing it more and more. This is one of the fascinating things about idol fashion. Fashion isn't always about something being obvious. Sometimes the most effective detail is the one that you discover gradually. At first you don't notice it. Then you see it. Then you can't stop seeing it. And suddenly, the entire look feels different. That may be exactly what happened with Jimin's Arlington soundcheck appearance. At first, fans were simply watching Jimin. Then they noticed his hair. Then his outfit. Then his movements. And eventually, their eyes stopped at one particular place. And perhaps some of you experienced exactly the same thing. You watched the footage. You saw Jimin. Maybe you were looking at his expression. Maybe you were watching his interaction with the crowd. Maybe you were simply enjoying the moment. Then suddenly, you noticed something. You rewound the video. You watched it again. You zoomed in. And there it was. But before we go any further, there is another important question. Why do moments like this become so emotionally meaningful to ARMY? The answer may have very little to do with fashion itself. For many fans, especially those who have followed BTS for years, every appearance carries memories. There are different eras that became part of their lives. There are songs that helped them through difficult periods. There are concerts they will never forget. There are moments when simply seeing Jimin smile through a screen was enough to make an ordinary day feel a little lighter. That is why even a small detail can feel meaningful. Not because the accessory necessarily contains a secret message, but because the person wearing it already holds a special place in the hearts of millions of people. And perhaps that is why a simple necklace can suddenly become something fans want to talk about. Think about a fan who has watched thousands of photos of Jimin, hundreds of videos, countless performances, different albums, different hairstyles, different fashion eras. They may not remember every single outfit Jimin has ever worn, but they can often recognize when something feels slightly different. That is the emotional connection created between an artist and an audience over time. It is not necessarily a personal relationship. It is a connection built through music, performances, memories, and years of shared moments. And when Jimin appears in front of ARMY, even the smallest detail can become part of that experience. Not because we need to assign a secret meaning to it, but because every fan brings their own memories when they see him. And perhaps that is why the necklace feels more significant than it might appear to someone watching casually. Not because we know there is a hidden story, but because Jimin himself is the one wearing it. And that is an important distinction. We can appreciate the detail without inventing an explanation. We can be curious without turning curiosity into a rumor. And we can enjoy Jimin's fashion without claiming something has a meaning that he has never confirmed. That balance is important, because the real story here is not necessarily that Jimin wore a mysterious necklace. The real story is that a tiny detail was enough to make fans stop, look closer, and appreciate the entire appearance in a different way. And perhaps that tells us something about the way ARMY sees Jimin. They don't simply watch. They observe. They remember. They compare. They notice. And sometimes, they discover details that the casual viewer would never see. Now, I want you to remember something. We still haven't reached the most interesting part, because the necklace itself is only the beginning. The real question is what happens when we look at it within the context of Jimin's entire Soundcheck appearance. Why did it stand out? Why did the camera capture it so clearly? And why does it look so different when Jimin moves? There is a reason the moment feels almost cinematic. The hair. The sunglasses. The relaxed outfit. The lighting. The movement. And then, that small detail around his neck. Everything comes together for a few seconds. And those few seconds are enough. Because sometimes, the most memorable moments aren't the ones that are planned. They are the ones that happen naturally. A glance. A smile. A movement. A small reflection of light. And suddenly millions of people are talking about it. That is exactly what makes fandom culture so fascinating. A global superstar can stand in front of an enormous audience, surrounded by massive production and world-class technology. And somehow, the thing that captures attention can still be something incredibly small. A tiny accessory. A subtle movement. A detail near his neck. And now we are getting closer to the moment that started all of this. Because after looking at Jimin's overall appearance, his styling, his movement, and the atmosphere around Soundcheck Day 2 in Arlington, there is one area that finally becomes impossible to ignore. His neck. And when the camera catches the right angle, we can finally see it. A small necklace. Simple. Subtle. But unmistakably there. And this is where the story should become even more interesting. Because now that we know what fans notice, the question changes. It is no longer, is Jimin wearing a necklace? We know he is. The real question is, why does such a simple accessory create so much curiosity? Is it the shape? Is it the small pendant? Is it the way it sits against his skin? Is it the way it moves with his hair and clothing? Or is it simply because Jimin has once again proven that he doesn't need anything extravagant to capture attention? And there is one more detail we need to explore. Some fans may look at the necklace and immediately wonder whether it has a deeper meaning. But does it? Or are we seeing a simple fashion choice through the eyes of a fandom that has become exceptionally good at noticing everything? That is where part 2 becomes important. Because we can go beyond the initial discovery and look at why this particular accessory works so well with Jimin's overall appearance, why subtle fashion details often become major talking points among fans, and what this moment reveals about the emotional relationship between Jimin and ARMY. So before you leave, go back and watch the soundcheck footage one more time. But this time, don't just look at Jimin's face. Look at the entire picture. Look at his hair. Look at the way he moves. Look at how the light changes. And then, look at his neck. You may suddenly understand why so many people stopped and looked twice. And if you only noticed the necklace after watching this video, comment, "Just noticed," below. But if you spotted it immediately, tell us exactly when you first noticed it. Because perhaps one of the most beautiful things about moments like this is that they remind us how a global superstar can still create a sense of discovery,